And now that you're tuned up, I'm going to tune you in. I'm with Holly Bowling today. Holly's classically trained pianist from San Francisco, and she started playing piano at the age of 5. She's currently on tour in the U.S. She's performing in Philadelphia tonight at the World Cafe. And she has 2 compilations that are compilations for piano, improvisations, and reimaginations, as she states it. One is covering Phish songs. It's called Distillation of a Dream. And the other one is the music of the Grateful Dead, and that's called Better Left Unsung. Holly, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me in.
Tell us briefly about the arrangements that you just played for us.
Let's see. We started off with Cassidy, one of my favorite Dead songs. And then we had Row Jimmy, and then Taste by Phish.
And the Taste song, I noticed that we got to a B part or whatever, and you kind of just transcended. I mean, it's just like you go into a trance when you play, like a spiritual state. How and why did you get started into music?
I started playing piano when I was about 5, and I studied classical piano for many, many years. And then at the same time, I had this whole other musical world and this whole other scene that I was really into, which was the music of the Dead and running around the country catching as many Phish shows as I could. So I was very much exploring these 2 different arenas of music at the same time. And eventually I found a way to bring those 2 parts of my world and myself together musically, which has been really, really gratifying.
And where did you go to college?
I went to San Francisco State.
You are from San Francisco. That's where you were born and raised?
No, I was born in Michigan, and then I lived in New Hampshire for a while. I've been in San Francisco since I was 3.
Electric Forest. Yeah. When you first started playing piano, what artists influenced you early on?
You know, when I first started playing, I was a little kid, so I guess my influences were...
I guess so. You started at the age of 5, but I meant, like, who were some of your heroes early on before you got into the jam band scene?
You know, I can speak to composers that were my favorites to play when I was playing classical. I really like late Beethoven, really like Schubert, big fan of Debussy. And then as I started to branch out later into other, a little bit further out there things within that general scene, I'm very much into minimalism. I really like Steve Reich's work. And
did you actually have to do Bach chorales when you were growing up, and is that how you got your gift for transposing? I guess so. Right?
I mean, I've done my share of writing out things in 4-part harmony, but I've had a large, I guess I would say ear training has been a big part of my musical education forever. And so because I learned to play piano that way initially, that really factored into my process now.
And you also taught piano for quite some time.
I did.
And you actually, I was reading where you taught a unique method called the Suzuki method, pardon me. Could you explain that method of teaching or that method of... Yeah, so that's how I learned to play, and then when I taught the Suzuki method as well. So it's based on heavy ear training emphasis, and the idea is that kids can learn to play music the same way that they learn their native language. So you're immersed in it many hours a day, and you hear it, you imitate the sounds that you hear, and you learn to speak or to play your instrument with good technique and good tone first, and then later on you start to attach the written representation and the symbols that match the experience that you already have of speaking or playing. So the same way that we would never learn to speak by sounding out words and try to teach a child to speak English by having them read first, it's the same idea with music. I think
so
that's
it's
amazing. That's great. Is piano the only instrument that you play?
I've played other things over the year, but nothing as seriously as piano. I'm kind of a hack on guitar, and I've played a bit of flute and violin and other things, but piano's...
Well, I continue after 25 years to be a hack on guitar. I still sit in front of my computer and play. And I'm interested in knowing, now, you know, your first CD that you put out is a compilation of Phish songs. You've seen Phish over 300 times. What was your first experience at your Phish show, and how did it evolve into seeing them over 300 times? I guess what grabbed you, what was...
Yeah, so I got into Phish when they were actually in a period of not playing any live shows, and I never thought I'd see them live. And the first time I saw them was their first show back after the hiatus that they took, so New Year's 2002 at Madison Square Garden. And I was beyond excited. I already knew the catalog inside and out, but I'd never had the live experience, and the energy in that room was just incredible. And I fell for it. I was hooked right away. all right, this is what I'm going to do. And then I caught as many shows as I possibly could over the years that followed.
It's funny, and I get that because I'm the same way with the Grateful Dead, and you just rattled off, I remember the exact date, and it was whatever you just said, March 2013, New Year's Eve or whatever, and I can remember actually like standing out in the rain and writing set lists.
Oh, yeah.
And seeing them when I saw them for the first time. I still have them in a box.
Yep.
My little box of rain, you know. But your handwriting, 4-part harmonies, and playing them with 2 hands, and with that, at least I know for the Phish album that you said you actually started to relate to the actual individual members of Phish and how they play, their patterns and what have you. And so how does that differ from your arrangements?
You know, I don't really think in terms of trying to play all 4 parts all the time. I try to play enough that I'm representing the cohesive whole, but I'm not trying to play all the notes that they're playing. It would be really busy on one instrument, but I'm trying to get the meaning behind it or the feeling behind it and capture some of that and sort of outline it as best I can.
And then I guess your first big break, and this story was told before, but you you were at a benefit, right, or a fundraiser, and you got to go up and play with Marco Benevento?
I kind of crashed his gig, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I am such a fan. I got to see Benevento Russo a couple times. I've got to see him play with his Joe Russo's Almost Dead, right? And so tell me briefly about that, going up and playing Atari and what that was like, and was that the key that took you to the next level to decide to play professionally?
You know, I had always had a dream of playing professionally, and I had been continuing to play music, but I had kind of decided, well, this isn't what I'm going to do to make a living. You know, this isn't going to be my career, but it's still something that I'm going to pursue for myself and for my own gratification. And yeah, that was just a random night. It's kind of a long backstory, but the takeaway for me was that it kind of lit a fire under me and reminded me how much I wanted to do this. And so I kind of think I went back to it with renewed energy in a way.
As Bobby would say, inspiration, right? From Terrapin. When you're performing live shows, how much of your arrangements are improvisation?
That's a great question. So it kind of spans from a spectrum of no improvisation at all, everything being completely scored down to the note, and almost like a classical work where every note and every rhythm and every inflection really is all predetermined and very carefully thought through, to songs that are almost entirely improvised. Like, for example, I do Dark Star, and as you know, the whole point of that song is for it to be an open-ended canvas, and it never sounds the same, and it shouldn't. And there's really only like a 2-minute nugget to the song that is the core of it, and everything else is an invitation for exploration. So I do these things called jam transcriptions, where I'm taking a particular piece of improvisation by Phish or the Grateful Dead that really inspired and moved me, and I'll score it out note for note, write it down, and try to recreate that or recast it for piano in a new way, but being very true to the original. And then on the other opposite side is something like Dark Star, or these songs that are launch pads to go wherever you want them to go, where I'm using their music and their composition as the seed, but then I'm taking it into my own space.
That's so great. It's such a different, beautiful addition to what jam bands and the whole scene has done for us. Are you ever throwing Grateful Dead stuff into Phish stuff into Grateful Dead stuff, throwing?
Yeah, 100%. Right now my shows are a pretty even mixture of songs by Phish and songs by the Grateful Dead. And so that opens up the door for a lot of interesting transitions and mashups, or teasing one song in the middle of another. And to me, it's been very interesting to see how those catalogs blend, and what places they overlap and what places are so far away that you have to really work to build a bridge to bring them together.
And I think being from the California area, I would like to think that your second home is Philadelphia. You've already played the World Cafe. You've been to the Ardmore, right? You've played. Talk about when you played. You were following Phish, and then you got to. You played a house where Mike Gordon came in, and it just happened to walk in out of the blue to see you play. Tell me about that experience. What that was like. It
was one of my first shows that I played, trying out this concept of solo piano renditions of Phish. And Mike Gordon happened to walk through the door right before I played my version of, Phish's famous Tahoe Tweezer, this 37-minute version of one of their songs. And so, there I found myself sitting at the piano playing this thing, playing his bass line with my left hand that I had meticulously written out over the last year. And lo and behold, there he is. It was really a trip.
I saw a video of that, and I was just taken by it. Howl at the Moon was the name of the place. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the place of that. I go to a lot of jam band shows. I get to see a lot of players come up and special guests with people. Does that happen at your shows too? Do you have like a guitar player come up and play with you, saxophone player sit in for numbers?
Once in a while I'll have a special guest, but it's a little bit different format. I think when you're playing with a 4-piece or a 5-piece or something and you want to have someone come guest for a minute, it fits the palette more without changing the sound quite as much. Whereas as a solo player, it's a different format entirely when you bring a second person on.
If we were to flip it then, I'm sure, are you able to cameo on other artists?
Yeah.
You played with Cabinet before, I saw that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And with American Babies too.
Oh, that's great, you did.
Yeah.
Who are some of the bands that you would love to play with?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably
That's
right?
A long list. Yeah.
Humphreys McGee.
I mean, I just love playing with people. It's my favorite way to get to know people. So I usually don't turn down the invitation.
Well, Billboard magazine has you beautifully recognized. Jam Bass has written about you. Live to Live Music. I want to thank you for being on the show. I welcome you back to Philadelphia again.
Thanks.
And guys, you can see Holly tonight at the World Cafe, and hopefully soon to the festival season's just starting, right? I know you're playing Peach. Right, you're playing Mountain Jam.
Yep, Disc Jam as well. Disc Jam, Tumble Down up in Vermont. I'll be at Beanstalk out in Colorado.
And for everybody who wants to tune in to Holly, it's hollybowling.com.
Yep, you got it.
There you go. And please buy her CDs and go see live music. I'm Scott Tamburino, tuning out.